I'm Dan Swartout, and this is Quality Time with MoreSteam. On this show, we talk about business. We talk about continuous improvement. We talk about problem solving. And today, we are joined by the president of MoreSteam, Peg Pennington. Prior to joining MoreSteam in 2018, Peg was the executive director of the Center for Operational Excellence at The Ohio State University. While at Ohio State, Peg also taught Lean and Lean Six Sigma classes to undergrad, postgrad, and executive ed students for more than 15 years. I'm excited to bring you some highlights from my interview with Peg Pennington. One thing I learned is that Peg believes in making work visual. Peg, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Dan. I'm delighted to be here.
So glad to have you on the show and so excited to learn more about your journey through the world of continuous improvement, through operational excellence. I think you have so much to share because of your experience in this space. I know you've written quite a few blogs and given quite a few presentations on the concept of making work visual. What can you tell me about that?
I think about as a leader that we want to put people in processes where it's easy for them to perform their work the right way. And when I think about the lean system, everything we're trying to do is to create alignment for people so that if they're working on the shop floor or working in a call center, they know why are we doing this the way we're doing this? And are we making it easy for them with visual work? The whole body of knowledge is about making things visual, making it easy to spot problems, making it easy for people to do the right thing. And I would say a philosophy of mine is it comes back to leadership. Have you put people in processes where they're gonna be successful or unsuccessful? That comes back to how work is designed. So when you are talking about how the work gets done, how the work moves, just creating maps of what are the handoffs
Hmm.
from person A to person B or back to the computer and back out. Do we even understand that? How work moves from the registration at a hospital to the something's going to the lab, going to radiology, going to intake, but just stepping back and making it, creating a map and getting people to getting the team, not like a specialist, but the team of people that work in the process to confirm and to make the map and confirm the map. I think that's really important. And just that one step of having people acknowledge this is the current state of the process and we want you to be part of the improvement. That's why I think I focus on the visual management systems so much.
Instead of having a specialist or one person dictating the map, you're saying that having the team itself that's involved with the work, that having the team make the work visual can be more beneficial.
There's plenty of CI, there's plenty of continuous improvement work that's done by specialists alone. And I don't think that's the spirit of it. I think the spirit of it is supposed to be this is part of the team, and the team is the one that is going to create the change. And I heard John Shook say once, he said, people will fight for their own idea to get their own idea implemented more than your idea. And I think that's really true. So if you can be a good coach to coach them to come up with improvement, those are the things that are going to stick versus me coming along and telling them what to do.
I know another thing that you're very passionate about is the idea of root cause analysis. For those who aren't already familiar with the topic, what exactly is root cause analysis?
So root cause analysis, I think, is extremely important to an operational excellence program. When you have something that goes wrong, either a special event or you have an ongoing quality issue that you continue to peel back that onion to find out what are the people always think it's a cause. And I would say most of the time there's multiple causes that create that event or those out of control conditions. And you want to have a system that you're able to work backwards and try to understand what's creating those abnormalities and then test and learn so that you can start trying to improve those processes. People will talk about it's the workers or fatigue or that somehow it's about blaming them. And I strongly believe it comes back to management. Have you put your associates in positions where they can excel? Or is their work super complicated or complex? That notion of trying to identify and eliminate root cause is really important part of operational excellence. And I think when you get to that next level, what the really good companies are doing, instead of waiting for something to go wrong, they're asking that question, how could something go wrong? And they're trying to put in countermeasures ahead of that.
Peg, how exactly? You mentioned peeling back the onion to get to the root cause. How do you exactly go about doing that? What is the process like for peeling back that onion to get to the answer?
Really good question. You have to immediately, you kind of build a timeline out of what happened, but you do that with the team that was actually involved in that perhaps quality or incident, that failure. But as a leader, the most important thing you have to do is explain to them this is not about naming, shaming, and blaming people. This is about improving our process because you don't want to gather the team and they don't talk. They feel that, hey, if I really share what happened, that I made a mistake and I'm going to get blamed for that, then your process is never going to get better. So it's really important as a leader that you make people feel psychologically safe so that they can speak up. You have to really explain that so leaders can get into and understand. Again, are we putting people in situations where it might be difficult for them to do the right thing, or they might be in a situation where they make a mistake. So it's really about having that team together and having that leader so that the team can share this happened and this happened. And I think in terms of that root cause analysis, we always talk about 5 why, asking why. But many times it's this and this happened.
Mhm.
I always use the example of fire. To have a fire, you need fuel and oxygen and an ignition. So there's multiple things typically that create that out of control condition.
After graduating with a degree in finance from Michigan State, Peg spent 10 years in the corporate world and earned an MBA from the University of Dayton. Then, Peg transitioned to teaching business classes at Ohio State. Here, Peg explains how she first became acquainted with Lean Six Sigma, and the principles of continuous improvement while teaching those business classes at Ohio State.
That's where I met Peter Ward. At the time, Professor Ward, he was starting to teach lean at the university, which nobody does that. And if they do, it's always in the College of Industrial Engineering. Is a very tools oriented or math oriented philosophy. And Peter was teaching it at the business school as this would be how you think about managing a business. So he was one of the first people ever, I would say, in the country that was thinking about lean and trying to bring it to a college of business. So going to Ohio State, I had that opportunity to meet Peter, and Peter was disconnected with the Lean Enterprise Institute, Jim Womack, John Shook, David Mann, and lots of good things happened from that. It was like a little incubator. And from that, Ohio State started the Masters of Business Operational Excellence program, which is a first in the country master's program in, I would say, lean and OpEx.
We haven't touched on how you became, aside from knowing Peter Ward, how you became a part of the lean culture. What was your transition from teaching more traditional business classes to teaching some of these Lean Six Sigma type classes?
I remember this is in 2002. I would say, assisting Peter with the lean curriculum, but there was a Six Sigma class, and MoreSteam helped with that, but I wasn't involved with that yet, but there was a consultant, and so 2 weeks before the class was gonna launch, and he came in and said he wasn't gonna teach it, and I had been kinda watching that, and I had been teaching statistics, and it's like, I wanna teach this Six Sigma class. So 2 weeks before class started, he quit. They had nobody to teach it, and I said, "I'll do it." That was in '02. That was my journey, and, I always tried to stay 2 weeks in front of the students. It's, definitely a really hard quarter, okay? I was hoping that I didn't have any super overachievers.
So you are learning the material as you are also teaching the material. What were the resources that you had to keep you 2 weeks ahead of your students?
MoreSteam, I was going through the MoreSteam curriculum, as were the students.
MoreSteam has
So
been involved with Ohio State for a long time, from the time you've been teaching this class in 2002 and before, correct?
yeah, yeah, MoreSteam also started in Columbus, Ohio, and always their thought was to use Ohio State as an incubator.
Mhm.
And so that's how that all of that connection started, was Bill Hathaway had a relationship with Peter Ward,
Uh-huh.
and Peter had that forethought to start that Six Sigma class along with the lean classes, and that's how he met Bill, and then I met Bill Hathaway through that course I decided to teach at the last minute.
Peg just mentioned Bill Hathaway. Bill is the founder and CEO of MoreSteam. And now we know that Bill and Peg had a long working relationship even before Peg came to MoreSteam. I think this is a really fascinating story. Peg had her formal introduction to Six Sigma by teaching a class about Six Sigma with just 2 weeks' notice. That's a lot of pressure. I wanted to know more about those early years teaching Lean and Lean Six Sigma classes at Ohio State. What were those first years like teaching those classes while also learning the curriculum?
On the lean side, I was just so lucky to be around some of the foremost thinkers of lean.
Right.
David Mann, John Shook, Jim Womack, Bo Keat, everybody has a book. They've had Peter Ward's a Shingo Prize winning author. So I'm like getting really imbued with lean and
You're under the learning tree every single day.
every single day. And I remember David Mann, he wrote Creating a Lean Culture. And I said something about leaning out a process, and I still remember, it's like getting taken by your ear, and he goes, "You don't lean out a process, you apply the principles of lean to a process."
Uh huh.
And it was one of those things. It's like, okay, wow, that stuck with me. On the Six Sigma side, of course, there's a little bit more statistics involved. So on one side, lean, it's so much about change management, as is Six Sigma, but there's more statistics involved. So there is a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more hitting the books and really becoming comfortable with the statistical side of that equation. And for me, it's been I see how it all comes together. That you want to tell a story, but you need to have data and facts with that story as well.
While teaching, Peg became very involved with the Center for Operational Excellence. The Center for Operational Excellence is at the Fisher College of Business at Ohio State. According to the OSU website, the Center for Operational Excellence, or COE, is a business consortium founded 30 years ago that connects organizations of all industries on their journeys to build and sustain a culture of problem solving and continuous improvement. Peg eventually became the executive director of the COE. I asked her about the COE's mission. At Ohio State, they have the Center for Operational Excellence, which Peter Ward very much involved in. Peter Ward, it's fair to say, is one of the preeminent thought leaders in the lean space in the entire country. Could you tell us just a little bit about the Center for Operational Excellence, what it is and what it does?
The center has about 35 member companies, and the purpose of the center is actually to bring those organizations together and create or provide education, okay? And it could be in the realm of operational excellence, it could be supply chain, and maybe topics that these organizations have in common. But it also creates an opportunity for these organizations to benchmark against each other. And when I say benchmark, I think if you're a chemical company, you're thinking, I got to benchmark against another chemical company. Or if I'm a bank, let me benchmark against another bank. But this is an opportunity to learn from people who are doing things outside your industry. And I think that's one of the most important things is that you see somebody, how they apply a concept, and you can take that back to how would that work at my organization? The hospital does really good registration. Well, what could we use some of those ideas? And I think sometimes that's where the best ideas come from is something that's outside of your industry that it sparks that idea in you that you can take back to your organization.
So, in addition to teaching at Ohio State, there is this Center for Operational Excellence, which provides real world, real time feedback and services to its member organizations.
As well as connecting organizations to students to run projects because at this point we have fairly robust ops classes where students need projects and those companies would supply the projects.
Right?
So that is another really good connection. And then that belief of connecting faculty to the problems of industry. When you think about there's a research mission connecting them to this is what's going on in the organizations today. These are the problems that they're running into. How is that research mission helping that?
So, the students at Ohio State who are involved in these OpEx classes are getting real world experience from the companies, from the organizations that are members of the Center for Operational Excellence.
Yeah, and think about how that helps them to go from theory to practice.
Right.
Okay, so we're giving them that foundational theory, but then they go out into industry and they have to write a problem statement. And it's like, oh, how do I do that? Or how do I, the problems with collecting data, or the problems understanding voice of the customer, the problems of getting people to actually change how they do something, to get them to see that maybe there's a better way. So the students get that real world taste. And I think when they go to interview, so when they graduate and they go to interview, they have a richer story to tell these potential employers about the experiences that they've had boots on the ground at these center member companies or other companies.
Traditionally, people think of continuous improvement as it relates to business, improving a process in manufacturing or some other type of industry. But continuous improvement tools and principles can impact society in numerous meaningful ways. Peg told me about Mercy Ships, an organization we have worked with here at MoreSteam.
We just published a story. Mercy Ships is an organization. They had one ship and it would go around into Africa, into South America, and help with cleft palates and foot problems. They're going to
Hmm.
do surgeries on the ship. They were able to get a second ship. So that in and of itself is great. But they wanted to have the ships set up the same. They needed more standard work. And if you can think about, wow, if we can get another operation today, what does that mean for somebody with a cleft palate? It's going to help them the rest of their life. So MoreSteam was able to provide them training, and that training was used to improve the workflow, set up the ships the same, and create these improved outcomes for a population that is really in need. And I think about that's great. Okay. I love working with all the organizations I do, but when we get to the heart of it, when we can do something like that and help an organization like that's a really good thing.
One of the things that was important for Mercy Ships was establishing this idea of standard work. Could you explain why that was so important for Mercy
Yeah,
Ships in their mission?
absolutely. So imagine in a surgical suite, you have a physician from Australia an anesthesiologist from the UK, a nurse from Costa Rica that haven't met each other before, and they're gonna perform a cleft palate surgery, and they're gonna do this. They're on the ship for could be 6 weeks or 6 months as volunteers. So everything in that surgical suite, their communication, it has to be standardized as much as possible to reduce risk so that you have strong visual management in the room, that everything coming in, information about the patient, very visual to reduce risk in that surgery, especially when you're bringing people together that are not, a surgical team like you would think of at a hospital that they're together frequently. So that's why it's so important. And think about the language barriers that you would have with global teams like this.
As volunteers move onto the ship and move off the ship, you've got to have a process in place because your team could be new at any given time.
Right. And when you say, hey, where are the supplies? It's got to be really labeled. It's got to be evident. It's got to be easy to find.
You can read more about MoreSteam's work with Mercy ships on moresteam.com. A link to the article is included in the episode notes. It's a really good story. In 2018, MoreSteam CEO Bill Hathaway asked Peg to come to MoreSteam. And after nearly 20 years at Ohio State, Peg made the jump. I asked Peg why she came to MoreSteam after such a long career at Ohio State.
Bill did talk to Peter before he talked to me about that. And I think Peter said, as long as it's a better job. Okay.
So Bill had been looking at you for this role without you even knowing it.
Yes. I was interested couple of things. Obviously, by this point, I'm really into the body of knowledge and
Mhm.
very interested in it. And interested at this point in educational technologies and simulations and how can we help expand simulations and have students create those opportunities for them to practice before they actually are practicing on their organization. And I was very interested in technology.
Right.
And I saw from my students in the MBOE program that this is the future of work. And I wanted to understand that more. Jim Womack wrote a book. It's called The Machine That Changed the World. He did that in 79, published by MIT. He looked at all the automotive companies in the United States, or actually around the world, and said, really, he was the one that came up with that term lean and talked about Toyota and really expanded this body of knowledge. And I'm like, who makes cars now? Software developers.
Mm-hmm.
And is this body of knowledge going to expand to software development? That's going to be the future of work and transactional processes. So I was really interested in that.
During our conversation, I noticed a pattern. At Ohio State, Peg was asked to teach a course on Six Sigma with just 2 weeks' notice. And even though she didn't know the subject very well, Peg said yes. Later, Peg was asked to become the president at MoreSteam. And even though she had a great career doing something she loved at Ohio State, Peg said yes again. I wanted to know more about this because I thought there might be a lesson here. Did it ever enter your mind to say no? That you're leaping into something so uncomfortable, so outside of what you normally do, that you almost hesitated to the point of saying no?
I always had that attitude of say yes. So every time they came to me and asked me to teach a new class, I always said yes. I feel like your point of learning is like when you start getting uncomfortable is really when you start learning. Okay.
Right.
Because I could have just stayed in an undergrad operations class, but you just keep pressing that envelope. And then these ideas from lean, I was getting deeply involved in that, and then also getting deeply involved in Six Sigma, and then you see how all of this magic comes together, or project management courses, or
Uh-huh.
supply chain. So that idea of say yes, and being uncomfortable, you have to say yes and no. Yeah, I'm gonna be uncomfortable for a bit because I have to learn another body of knowledge or test myself or get comfortable with telling students, yeah, I can't answer that question for you right now, but I'll research it and get back with you. Say yes to those opportunities. So just jump in and say yes. And that's where the learning happens at the margins.
My conversation with Peg wasn't all business. We had some fun too. I've lived in Ohio my entire life, but I have a lot of family from Michigan. In fact, my parents met when they both lived in Detroit. Peg went to Marysville High School. Now, you may not know where Marysville High School is in Michigan, but you will now. Marysville High School, class of 1983, Marysville is, of course, very close to Port Huron. How would you, as people from Michigan do, often describe where they're from by using their hand because of the shape of the state of Michigan? Where did you live in Michigan on your hand?
Okay. I'm on obviously that and I do that all the time. I love when I meet people from Michigan. I've got my hand up and it's on the outside, the base of my thumb, and that's where the Blue Water Bridge is. And it's a great way for people from Michigan to communicate with each other, except for the UP. It gets a little bit harder if people are from the Upper Peninsula, but to do that.
So you have a great time, accomplish a lot, obviously a high achiever at Marysville High School, and then you move on to Michigan State. You're a Spartan. What was your reason for going to Michigan State as opposed to the University of Michigan, other schools in Michigan, schools outside of the state of Michigan?
Well, I can tell you, my parents wanted to keep me pretty local,
Uh-huh.
keep their eyes on me. But my mom was a Michigan State grad, and my dad was a Michigan Tech grad. And that just seemed like I don't even know what they do up there, at Michigan Tech. It's so far away, and I didn't know what an engineer was. Okay, my dad could have educated me a little bit more on that.
Where,
But
Peg, where is Michigan Tech on
it
the
is
hand?
see right there is the problem. You can't even put Michigan Tech on the hand because 'cause they're way up here in the Upper
Michigan
Peninsula.
Tech is in the Upper Peninsula.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's almost in like, going around you're in Wisconsin, it's so far away.
Now we know where Peg went to high school, the outside base of the thumb. That's about 60 miles northwest of Detroit. We'll be right back after this brief message. MoreSteam is the leading global provider of online training, certifications, and technology for Lean Six Sigma. We work with individuals, universities, and businesses, large and small, to provide proven solutions that are right for them. From interactive training to process improvement software, we are here to help you work as efficiently and effectively as possible. Visit moresteam.com to learn more. To close our conversation, I asked Peg if she had some final words to share with our audience.
I would just say, like, thinking about my career, how lucky I was that people mentored me.
Uh huh.
Glenn Milligan, Peter Ward, Wansu Ree, Bill Hathaway. And if I hadn't have had those people that mentored me, I wouldn't be where I am today. So if people are listening, are you thinking about who are you mentoring?
Right.
Who are you really helping with their career? Because that was so important in my career growth. And I want to make sure that I'm doing that as well.
Peg, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fantastic conversation. Very much appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us here on Quality Time with More Steam. I hope you will join us again sometime in the future, Peg.
Thank you, Dan.
Take care. Thank you very much to our guest, Peg Pennington. Great conversation. I learned a lot. And thank you for listening to Quality Time with More Steam. I'm Dan Swartout. You can email the show at qualitytime@moresteam.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. Also, please go ahead and visit our website, moresteam.com, to learn about the software and tools that can help you solve problems, eliminate waste, and do things better. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more Quality Time with More Steam. Thanks again.